Are you a gardener or trying to get into gardening and have no idea what you need to be planting right now, or even what you can grow in whatever month or whatever part of the world you're in? Well, welcome to my new series where we're covering exactly that. I call it So What? Where each month I'm going to go through the best things that you can sow or plant in that given month. And this isn't just going to be a list. I will give you tips along the way for what to do with that given thing, especially if you're planting it in that month. Say, some of these we're a little bit late on, some we're a bit early on. I'll tell you how to modify that for still being able to get a great harvest this season. So sit back, hit that full screen button, and let's dig in. The number one question I always get asked in my comments is, what can I grow right now? And to be honest, it is probably the main hurdle that a lot of new gardeners need to first overcome, because if you don't know what to plant, you don't even start encountering other problems like pests or when to water or fertilize. All right, without further ado, let's just jump straight into the first one. Peppers / capsicums. Of course, being in November here in Australia, the southern hemisphere, which is the opposite to the northern hemisphere, even though some of my comments don't exactly understand that. Which, being in November, means that we are exactly 1 month away from summer. As of filming, we're actually halfway through November, so summer's only a couple weeks away. For peppers and capsicums, it is definitely still early enough in the year to be able to start these straight from seed. However, of all the things in the list, this is one that it's definitely a valid option to jump straight for paying for a more expensive seedling or established plant from a nursery. Because what a lot of people might not know is that peppers and capsicums are actually perennials, meaning that they don't just grow for one season of fruit like, say, tomatoes do, even though they're in the same family. Capsicums, you get to do what's called overwintering, which is as long as you're in a warm enough climate, which here in chilly Victoria, we are. What happens is during the cooler months, all the leaves just shed. If you can, you bring it under cover because you don't want to leave it wet. And then once the next warmer season rolls around, you plant them back out into your garden. And during the second, third, and beyond years, you'll get so much better fruits than you will in your first year. Number 2, tomatoes. We are getting towards the end of the window of being able to start tomatoes from seed. You still definitely can. One of the beautiful things about tomatoes is that the warmer it gets, the faster they grow. So if you are like me and you started your tomatoes all the way back in August, they're now only getting to be about a foot high, maybe a little bit bigger. But if you start them from seeds right now, they'll catch up to that size in about a month, 6 weeks. So even though I started mine nearly 3 whole months ago, by starting them from seed so much later, you don't actually lose a whole lot of time. Or maybe if you have other friends that are into gardening and they have tomato plants, you can probably ask them to come and prune some of their tomatoes, steal some suckers, and propagate your own tomato plants from those. If you want to know more about that, you can check out this video, which is my ultimate pruning guide on tomatoes, which includes a tutorial on how to propagate from cutting. But if you want, you can start from seed. At this point of the year, buying them seedlings is definitely something valid, especially if it's your first couple times growing tomatoes and you want to just get something planted out into your garden. It's a great option. Number 3, cucumber. We are getting into peak time of year. It's definitely a great time to be starting cucumbers from seed. You can also buy them as seedlings, but the seeds themselves are so vigorous and so easy to start. It's definitely something that this time of year I would still be leaning towards starting from seed and saving a little bit of money as opposed to going straight to seedlings, especially because the seedlings that they sell in nurseries of cucumbers are only about a week or 2 old compared to starting them from seeds. You're not actually saving that much time. Cucumbers are a climbing plant, so you will need to give them some sort of a structure, trellis, cage, weird, wiry gobbledygook for them to climb up, and you will have cucumbers dangling down from it, which you get to pick and chuck into your summer salads. Towards the end of the season, you'll end up with probably a lot, and then you'll get into pickling, like me, and then give them to your Latvian friends. Number 4. The hardest part about this video is actually just peeling up the tape. Ugh. Pumpkins, or if you're in a part of the world where you call some varieties of pumpkins squash or winter squash, now is the perfect time to start them. You definitely still have enough time to get these started from seed. Very similar to cucumbers, the seedlings that you will buy in nurseries aren't actually that old. The seedlings themselves would have only been a couple days old since emerging when you're buying them, so starting them from seed is definitely a great option. There is a great hack that a lot of people do with pumpkin seeds, where you can clip off one of the sides of the seed to help get water in there quicker and help make it easier for those first seedling leaves to get out, and you will find that your germination times for pumpkin seeds come right down. You do need a fair bit of space to grow pumpkins. They do like to vine out over a large area, but if you do have a smaller area, there are smaller varieties that you can definitely check out, such as the Golden Nugget, which is, even though I have quite a bit of space, one of the varieties that I still grow because I love the little, tiny little pumpkin that serves about 2, that stores super well. And you just get to pull out of your storage at dinner time and eat a yum yum. Number 5. Basil. We are finally in basil season. It is one of the crops that I am just waiting so desperately to get properly into the season to start growing. Basil is a heat-loving plant of the mint variety family of plants. Sweet basil is the one that needs the heat the most. Because it's quite quick and vigorous growing now that the full sun and heat is here, you can definitely start this from seed. The trickiest part about growing basil, in my opinion, is getting the seedlings established after transplanting. So make sure to sow a whole lot more seeds than you think you'll eventually want to grow. You only actually need to get a couple of plants well established to have just about as much pesto as you could possibly eat through the entire season. And the other great thing is that once you do have an established basil plant, it's really easy to propagate off. So if you want to grow basil, which I encourage you to do, expect to kill a lot of them, hopefully some survive, and then you will have a lot of basil for all of your summer meals. Number 6. Corn. Corn is definitely the right time of year to be starting corn. And this is one that I would not recommend buying as a seedling because, in case you didn't know, a single corn kernel is what turns into one whole corn plant. And the thing about corn is you do need to grow a lot of it together to, one, kind of helps all support itself, but 2, the way that corn pollinates is it doesn't actually use pollinators. They need to physically slap into each other in order to pollinate, and each individual corn kernel on an eventual corn cob is one single receptacle that needs to have pollen land in it. So that's a whole lot of pollination that needs to occur. And again, they are pretty easy to get started from seed. I would still start them in seed trays and then transplant them, especially to help minimize issues with the early seedlings getting chomped on. If you do want to grow it, you do need to grow a fair bit of it. The minimum space you're probably going to want is about 1 meter by 1 meter. Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. A fair few comments I do get a fair bit is asking why your potatoes aren't going that well. Well, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that even though potatoes, you can definitely grow them over the winter and over the cooler months, they are one of the limited varieties that in temperate climates like Victoria and Australia, they do grow pretty well throughout winter. They grow a bit slow, but pretty well. But the reality is they are a nice warm weather loving plant. So if you've tried to grow potatoes in the past, especially through some of the cooler months, and you haven't had that much success, definitely try to give them a go over the warmer months. Now is a great time to start them. I do really recommend going to a nursery and getting actual certified seed potatoes because they are going to be so much more disease resistant than just planting ones from the supermarket. You can accidentally essentially poison your soil with a type of mold called early potato blight if you do plant ones from the supermarket and they do get infected with that mold, which is a huge hassle to get rid of. You essentially need to do a full soil turnover. So it's definitely worth the $8 to $10 of going and buying some actual seed potatoes. If you're like me and you do prefer to grow them in containers, you will probably need to water them a few times over the season. You'll also probably need to give them some fertilizer, but if you are just growing them in a raised bed or in the ground, they are a really set and forget plant. You probably need to go away, fly. You probably need to not water them at all unless you are experiencing a legitimate drought or live in a desert. Unfortunately, potatoes just don't grow that well in Antarctica. But if you're Matt Damon, they grow quite well on Mars, apparently. I've never tried. Oh, and if you didn't know, to grow potatoes, you literally plant a potato and it turns into a whole potato plant that then grows more potatoes. Just in case anyone's confused about that. All right, next one, 8. Eggplant. This is just about the most heat-loving plant. This is the summer vegetable. Definitely one that you have time to start from seed. It's one that's a pretty okay option to buy as a seedling just because you tend to get a lot. What else do I say about eggplants? They're pretty easy to grow. Next, 9. Beans. Beans, you can definitely still start beans this time of year. It is one that I would just never buy as a seedling, really. They are so easy to start. And again, the seedlings are really only a couple days old when you're buying them from a nursery. What I do recommend is just whatever variety you're buying, just make sure to properly read the description or choose the seed packet. Different varieties of beans do have different preferences for the type of heat that they grow in. So just make sure to pick out a variety that does work well in your part of the world in this part of the season. Number 10. Zucchini. It's almost like the summer fruit. All right, a lot of these are, you can make a case for most of these are the summer fruit, but zucchini is the one that if you have never grown, you've got to give it a go. There's just so much that you will get off one plant. You'll be blown away by how productive it is. Every single day you come out, you will go, why is there 3 or 4 new zucchinis growing on this thing? And we're only about a month or so away from the time of year where every single morning, all I eat for breakfast is a whole bunch of roast tomatoes and fried zucchini because there's so much of it. And I've got to work out what to do with it, so it just becomes my standard breakfasts. And zucchini, unlike pumpkins, does not take up anywhere near as much space. And if you do even have really limited space, there are ways that you can grow and prune zucchini to take up much less room. If you look up staking zucchini, you will find some examples of where you use a garden stake to tie a zucchini plant to it, and you remove all of the lower leaves and you slowly train it up to be a bit of a taller plant, so that it takes up much less of your actual garden bed space. And again, I would probably recommend starting it from seed as opposed to going for a seedling because they're just so damn quick this time of year. Now that we've been through the list, if you are deciding to grow tomatoes, I do highly recommend that you check out my ultimate guide on tomato pruning. I won't say this, but a lot of the comments have said that it is the best tomato pruning tutorial they've ever seen. It's the only one that makes sense. I've made it in a way to where you should only have to watch it once and you will understand tomato pruning for the whole rest of your life. So thank you very much. Thank you to the Patreons. Consider checking it out if you want to support the channel. Not only do you help me make these videos by supporting me, you also just get to be part of an awesome online gardening community. Thank you very much. If you like this video, make sure to leave me a comment so that I can continue to make this series year round. Thank you. I'll see you next time.